Hi, I'm Corey.
Hi, I'm Tess.
Welcome to A Lovely Place.
We're so glad you've joined us as we invite Jesus into the midst of our lives, learning, and laughter.
We hope this podcast can encourage your heart and make you smile today.
Hello, my friend Corey.
Hello, my friend Tess. And to all our friends listening, we're so glad you're here with us.
Yes, it feels like a little while since we've recorded. We've had some, well, I guess I was on vacation last week. So,
Yay.
yeah. So we are starting a new book, and I'm really excited about it because I think it's very timely for my own life. So I think maybe it will be timely for other people's lives as well. You want to tell us a little bit about our new book?
Rebecca Lyons is the author, and she's the fancy spelling Rebekah. I always feel like I'm like, how does that spell again? Anyways, and the book is Rhythms of Renewal, Trading Stress and Anxiety for a Life of Peace and Purpose.
Yes.
Whoosh.
Yeah.
And we're done. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
Just
I
kidding.
think I've been feeling some stress and anxiety lately. We've been kind of going through a challenging time with one of our kids, and I've been feeling anxious about it. So as I'm reading this book, and in the intro, she's talking about like fear and panic attacks, and I'm like, oh, I can really relate to what she's saying right now. So I'm excited to dig in, and I'm already practicing some of the rhythms that she's talking about, and I notice the difference when I do. So I'm excited for our listeners to hear some of these things. So
Yeah.
I think it will be good. I was thinking the other day, or as I was thinking about what I was going to say today, that I have the fortunate situation of anonymity with my kids because I can just say one of my kids, but I was thinking about your kid, and whenever you're talking about a struggle with your kid, it's very much not anonymous.
Right.
So anyway, that was just a random thought that
Maybe that means
came through
I'll
my
have
mind.
Yeah. Tell Riker, I love you, buddy. Or like Rick and Elizabeth Sawchuk, how they're like, we'll pay you for us to use your illustration on Sunday sermons. Maybe
a
I'll
good
have to work
idea.
a deal out. But Stefan, which means Riker, has been like, Mom, don't take my picture right now. You can't do anything with that. Or so he's been voicing his opinion about his personal content in the world.
Yeah.
Most of the time I'm just texting it to grandma or dad, but sometimes he's like, Mom, not right now. I'm like, okay, sorry, dude.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
We went, so on our vacation this time, we went to a place that the last time we had been there was like 6 years ago, I think, when Jackson was still a little baby, and then Spencer was like 4, and him and I had taken a picture on this tree, and so we found the tree again, and I was like, let's recreate the picture, and I like sit down, and Jackson comes in, and I was like, well, you weren't in the picture, but okay, I guess you can sit with me. And then Spencer's like, really?
Yeah.
And glares the whole time. So I was like, oh, never mind.
Captured a different moment.
Right. Yes. Oh my goodness. So the first rhythm that Rebecca talks about is rest, which I think, it's a good one. It's hard though. Why is it so hard for humans to want to rest?
Well, it's just countercultural.
Right?
Goes against what we have. Yeah.
Yeah, we have I know we talked about it on one of our episodes before. I don't remember what we were talking about, but that being productive, we kind of evaluate whether our days were good or bad, whether we were productive or not. So it's definitely, rest is a counterintuitive concept. So
Yes. And just she has two, she calls them input rhythms, rest and restore. And
Yeah.
then output rhythms are connect and create. And within those four sections, the book, she dives in deeper. But that's kind of a nice framework to think of, like, okay, rest and restore are coming in, and then create and connect are moving out. So that's kind of where Heather's coming from, of like, how can I have a
Rebecca.
excuse me. I just keep talking about Heather. And last night I was at a mom book study with church, and I kept mentioning the Don't Mom Alone podcast. And I'm like, I had to stop myself. So I guess you know that I like this podcast, but I also like Rebecca's podcast, and she has one,
Yes.
the same title, Rhythms of Renewal.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that just helps me when I kind of have a little framework to hang. What is this information?
Yeah.
What am I collecting here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And good to remember that we're taking in, getting the input before we try to pour out to
Right.
other people, that you can't pour out without having filled up first. So, one of the quotes that stood out to me in the intro, I want to read it real quick. It says, "Have you found yourself trapped in fear, feelings of unworthiness, rejection, loneliness, depression, isolation, restlessness, or boredom? If so, know this: God makes a way of escape. Not only that, but he promises a life of abundance, a rich life, not just escape from negative cycles." And I think, I don't know, she shared some statistics about depression and anxiety and stress responses and stuff like that pre-pandemic. And I kind of think probably at the point that we're at right now, there's even more people struggling with it. And so I think this is going to be a good book to dig into. So
Definitely.
I'm excited. So what rhythms of rest were kind of standing out to you this week as you were reading?
Well, just her first part, she talks about, or after she introduced it, I guess, then she's talking about taking inventory, reflecting on where you're at right now, and there's some good questions. And at first I was kind of like, what is she talking about? What's wrong? What's confused? What's missing? And I liked how she was saying you could even theme your inventory to kind of help focus in a little bit more, which made me think of the lazy genius way of like, okay, what's important to me in this season as I'm taking inventory, and like kind of like a check-in again with yourself, which we've kind of mentioned a few different times on our lovely podcast and in our lovely place. So apparently that's what God's really working on my heart right now, is what's in my inventory, or like, what am I focusing on?
Yeah.
What am I not focusing on? And because sometimes I get in a mixed up struggle of trying to push forward into the next thing. And I don't know that that's what I need to be doing right now. Like, I'm still in the middle of a lot of things. Like, keep doing this. I'm like, oh yeah. Like, okay. So some of the things I felt like, what's missing in my heart, like, where's that piece that you're in this moment, like not trying to rush through kindergarten with Riker, or rush through dinner because I don't want to make a plan. Like, so I just like, oh yeah, let's make a plan and make a plan for Riker's school. So apparently I need more structure and more planning to keep me in the right boundaries. Like, here you go, Corey. Like, this is where you are right now. And not to feel like I'm trapped in that space, but to feel like I can live in that space and I don't have to do all the other things.
Yeah.
Like, oh wait, no, that's not in my fence right now. That's really good, but nope, I can't do that right now. So it's like, okay, let's take inventory. So that was really helping me, like, just like get to the next layer of what's going on right now in this season. So I found it very helpful.
Good. Well, and that kind of goes along with something we talked about in one of our other episodes that was on the Don't Mom Alone podcast, the Sunday planning, and kind of at the beginning of that process, taking out a plate, like a paper plate or whatever, and writing down all of the different things that you have on your plate, your different roles and stuff like that. Because without actually like gathering that information and having it all in one place, I think we can get to the point where we sign up for or commit to, or like maybe even just agree to in our own minds all of these things that we think we need to be doing. And when we can put them into one place, it gives us the ability to consider, like, are all of these things sustainable? Are they, like life-giving, all the things. And then we can be present in our moments without being hurried and like frantic. Because I think sometimes that's how I get when I haven't thought things out well enough, It's like, just kind of crazy. So I think this is a good principle. Well, and it reminds me in the Bible too that I will find where this is at, but where I think it's Jesus talking about the man who builds a tower, like counts the costs, like basically figures out how much he's going to need to spend and, buy before he actually starts the work, because otherwise you might end up with an unfinished tower. So I think this is kind of that too. We need to just look at our lives and see, what's going on there. And I love that missing, it's right, wrong, missing, and confused. We used to do that in kids ministry and like also in a work setting, but I've never really thought about doing that for my own life. So I think that's a good thing to do. So
yeah. And I just was thinking like the part that was missing for me, and I don't mean to keep going back to meal planning, but that's where I'm at right now. So here we go. And just like, how many times have I read or heard on various podcasts, such as Heather's podcast, of how important it is to have that time around the dinner table. And so then I'm just thinking like now, like, okay, well, that puts a lot more why into meal planning and grocery shopping and the time it takes to get to the car and when that's on my calendar. And so all of that now becomes an opportunity to honor my family and that treasure that time, that it's like, maybe it's not an amazing dinner or the best recipe in the world, but that one time gets to keep adding up to times across Riker's life and in our life, our family, our marriage. Like, so it's just hitting me in a different way right now. Like, okay, thank you, Lord, for speaking to me. Like that matters. And like, I think I was trying to minimize it. Like, well, what's my problem? It's just dinner. Like, who cares? Like, we're just in the kitchen. It's fine. Yeah. But it's like being intentional about like, oh, okay, our family cares about each other and learning to eat good food. Like, that's a thing that we're working on. Like, so. Yeah.
Well, and I think that goes back to what we talked about in the Lazy Genius, that way that, starting small, like even little decisions like that can change the culture of your family, Right. So you're right. It seems like a small thing, but it is every day you make those decisions, it makes a big difference. So, I lost my train of thought there. Oh, so the next one that she talks about is a really hard one for me. She talks about tech detoxing. So limiting or cutting out some, whether it be social media or whatever, technology, because I am totally guilty of sometimes opening my phone to like look at a text message from someone or, like set a timer or something. And then just somehow I click on Facebook and then I'm like there. And then I'm like, what am I doing? It's almost like unintentional, And so this chapter, she was talking about her Instagram addiction and how it got to the point that her family was like, can you just put your phone away and like not take a picture of us? And
could you remember this moment in a different way?
Right. Yeah. So that stood out to me. And so I was trying to do that on vacation. I mean, I didn't fully cut anything out, but I was trying to like worry less about taking pictures or even like posting pictures on Facebook.
Yeah.
And you know, one thing that I've been trying to focus on lately is being in each moment that I'm in, kind of like you were talking about.
Yeah.
And so like closing my eyes and thinking, okay, I think this was on another Don't Mom Alone podcast, but like, what do I want to remember about this moment? And thinking about, you know, what am I feeling? What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I smelling? You know, and so kind of like, especially one time when we were out in the waves at the coast, I was like, okay, well, my phone's not even with me because I didn't want to drop it in or get soaked or something. Right. So then I had some of those good moments where I could just think, okay, what do I want to remember about this? And it brought me so much more joy than just like taking a picture, you know, because I've got so many pictures on my phone. So that principle has been kind of bouncing around in my heart and my mind lately. So
yeah. And I love from a different ladies group I was in, one of the ladies was referencing like, well, okay, what am I wanting from Facebook right now? And how can I get that in a more healthy way or an actual connection, right? Like I'm wanting to connect with a person. Well, what if you actually did that? Like you called somebody and said, hey, how are you doing today? I was thinking about you, instead of just like mindlessly scrolling. Like it felt like I was like, okay. And so I don't remember if we were still home during the pandemic, when I heard that friend say that, and I was just like, oh, okay. And so then I kept thinking of my one uncle. So I called him up and I said, well, I was thinking about you, so I thought I'd call you. And he said, well, I guess you haven't been thinking about me that much then, or something like, you know, like he was teasing me or whatever. But it was nice to talk to him, and we chatted, and I think I called him one other random time, and then we've been randomly texting each other at different times. But it just was like, it felt actually good. Like, hey, there's another person, another human that knows I'm a human and could have a connection with me, versus this screen where there might be pictures of humans, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not the full presentation.
Yes.
So.
It's
Jesus,
missing so much.
We need you. Help me.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, I was listening to someone talking the other day about, you know, that like 90% of our communication is nonverbal, and then how much more of that gets lost over like text messages or Facebook comments or whatever.
Yes.
And so the importance of like seeing people's faces and their bodies as you're talking to them, you know, because that so much is expressed in that. And that kind of reminds me of what she was talking about. The next principle is getting quiet. And she was saying that, she said, quiet listening also taught me to discern. Quiet discernment helped me see when someone was hurting, striving, or pushing too hard. And it led me to ask whether there was a need I could meet. And that reminded me of our friend Evie, and our Restoration Life group that both of us have been a part of in the past. But and just reminded me, like, Evie talks a lot about her quiet times with the Lord, and she's an amazing person that can kind of just like read what you're feeling, which sometimes can be, you know, like intimidating if like, oh, I don't really want you to know what I'm feeling right now. But is so comforting and good when it's like she notices those nonverbal cues and is attuned to that. And I think that comes from being quiet and not being rushed. And so Yeah. I want to be better about getting quiet. I struggle with that one.
Yeah. Well, I first read this Rhythms of Renewal book at the onset of the pandemic in March, April 2020. And I was outside doing yard work and had earbuds in listening to this. And I had just finished the emotionally healthy spirituality class and I hadn't jumped into Mending the Soul yet. So this was like my little interim book. And it kind of felt like this whole book is the last chapter of emotionally healthy spirituality. Like I don't remember what Peter calls them. He
Rule
doesn't
of
say
life.
rhythm. Yeah, rule of life. So
Yeah.
I didn't quite connect on an emotional level with that, where I connected with Rebecca and her rhythms. And I was like, okay, this is what I need to put in my life as I'm healing. And I was literally digging up rocks in my yard, looking for the rocks, which was a flip. So it's interesting. In my, usually you're like, these rocks. And I'm like, yeah, rock. So, but my rock at that time and still being challenged was to be quiet. And that's what one of the skills was learning in both of those books. And I don't know, now it's been 2 years, still learning how to be quiet, but there's more times, like I know what that feels like now to be quiet with him
Yeah.
and to breathe and like just to be in that moment. So it's like, okay, I need to take this to the next quiet level. Like, okay, let's check in with that. Like, am I
Yeah.
actually taking time to be quiet?
Yeah.
Or am I filling it with scrolling?
Right.
The moments I could be quiet.
Yes. Well, and I think it reminds me that, the principle that like the more you do something, the more you want to do something. Like that's just kind of the way we as humans are made, and so as we intentionally get quiet more, the more we will desire that in our lives and be able to, and then it will be easier to make the decision to do it.
Yeah.
But that kind of reminds me of a verse that I was reading last night in Psalm 77. And so it's verse 1 says, I cried out to God for help. I cried out to God to hear me. When I was in distress, I sought the Lord. At night, I stretched out untiring hands, and I would not be comforted. I remembered you, God, and I groaned. I meditated, and my spirit grew faint. You kept my eyes from closing. I was too troubled to speak. I thought about the former days, the years of long ago. So that just totally makes me think that, like, here the psalmist was distressed, he was restless, he was anxious, and just didn't feel like he could get any relief from it. But then he went back and thought, he said, I will remember the deeds of the Lord. In verse 11, yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. I will consider all your works and meditate on all your mighty deeds. And then it moves into like praise of God and all the things that he's done. And so it just reminded me, like, if I'm always focusing on the next thing and thinking about what I need to do next and moving and, doing, it's almost impossible to think about what God has done for me in the past and to remember his faithfulness. And the terrible thing is, if I don't slow down during the day to remember those things, when my brain starts to slow down or my body starts to slow down at night for bedtime, just like the psalmist said, that's when I start to get those restless thoughts and just kind of spinning thoughts. And at that point, then it's hard to do much about it. And so this has just been a good reminder for me that, like, it's so important for my soul to take that quiet time each day to remember what the Lord has done and to put some of these practices.
It's like that song in White Christmas with Bing Crosby. Count your blessings instead of your sheep. Like, count what has God done? What is he doing? What are his mighty works? Yeah. Just some okay, how can I do that instead of, like you said, spinning or getting anxious or,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there was a verse in First Peter that that you were thinking of for today.
Yes.
First Peter 5:7, is that right?
Yeah. Let me get back there. And he was talking about being clothed in humility, and in verse 6 he says, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your cares upon him, for he cares for you. Be sober and vigilant.
Vigilant.
Thank you. I'm like, this is not how that's said. Thank you, friend. Because your adversary, the devil, walks around like a roaring lion whom you're seeking to devour. And I just thought, okay, we're starting this with being humble because he's mighty. We're casting our cares on him because there's a devil wandering around. So this is serious. Like, we're like, and then the psalmist guy, like, he's getting, what's going on with me? And oh yeah, Lord, you're doing this. I'm thinking about what you're doing, because it's important. So where are we focused? Like,
Yeah.
and God's working on a lot of things in my heart right now that I haven't quite fully processed yet, but soon I'll share more. But it's just like how amazing God is, that keep meeting us again and again. And I just love him so much.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we get to have this time together and learn from other Christian friends in our books that we get to talk about and get to share. I'm really thankful for this lovely place. Like, I've missed us talking, and I appreciate this opportunity. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just,
Me too.
very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that verse. Reminds me too that God cares for us and loves us before we ever do anything.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when Jesus was baptized, like before his ministry even started or anything. And God said, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased, And so we're not hustling for approval. We're not working so that we might be blessed. Like working in order to earn rest. Like we get to rest, and then work out of the overflow of that, like Rebecca talks about. So
yeah,
it's good. It's good. And I'm thankful that we have this opportunity to share with each other what we're learning, because that just helps me to process it and remember what I'm learning, and then to share with our listeners as well, because I hope that the things that bless us and encourage us can bless and encourage them too. So
yeah. And I love that it's just the small things that just kind of change. That's like, oh, that's why I'm doing this. And so that just has blessed my heart. And then I think Rebecca even has a quiz on her website or something that you can kind of check in with yourself if you don't have the book with you, or you don't want to read the book right now or whatever, and you're listening, but you're like, I'm a little more curious. I think there's a little quiz we can link.
Okay.
You can kind of check in with yourself or
Perfect.
whatever. Anyways, thanks.
All right. And so our listeners can check out our show notes. We have a link there for if they want to buy the book and read along with us. And that's just one of the ways that they can support our podcast and support our featured author, Rebecca Lyons. And it's a great book that I think will have a lot of rereadability value as well.
Yes.
So I think all the books we've done so far are things that I will definitely pick up again. So
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, friend.
See you, hear you, be with you later.
All right. Bye-bye.